And the second part of the petition is that we are to forgive each other as God has forgiven us. And the way in which the Catechism puts this gets us to the right place right at the beginning. The right place right at the beginning is that it is the firm resolution from our heart to forgive our neighbor. So it doesn't go right at the beginning to the actual forgiving of our neighbor, but it says it's the firm resolution of my heart. And that is incredibly helpful. As I have the evidence of God's grace of forgiveness to me, what that produces in me is a resolution of my heart, a conviction of my heart. You see, that's what the gospel does for us. The gospel gives us convictions. When we know God's grace and mercy in Jesus Christ, God works in us convictions out of that grace and mercy in Jesus Christ. Generally, the conviction and resolution to live for God. And part of living for God in faithfulness is this, the conviction of heart. That gospel conviction that says, I resolve to forgive my neighbor who sins against me. And those are the convictions and resolutions of heart that need to prevail here. In a Christ-centered church, the conviction of heart of all of its members is that we live with a readiness, a willingness, a desire to forgive our fellow neighbor in the Church of Jesus Christ. In a home in which it's a Christ-centered, gospel-centered home, there is in the hearts of parents towards children and children towards parents and siblings toward each other the conviction to forgive. This is the spirit with which we live. The spirit of forgiveness and love and mercy towards each other. It's the spirit with which we live because in the daily consciousness of my sin before God, the sin that I know I am guilty of, the sin that I know is worthy of death, but the sin in God's love that was imputed to Jesus and covered so that He declares to me and works in me the consciousness, it's done, it's gone forever. When I live day by day, week by week, in that reality, I have the conviction. You have the conviction. The resolution, because you know what God has done for you, to forgive your neighbor. The Catechism leads us to that right place, the heart, the resolution. And out of that heart and resolution comes the actual forgiving. And as the Catechism from the Petition teaches us, there's a parallel. As God does this, so we do this. So that in our forgiveness of our neighbor, it is a sending away of that sin. That main idea of the word forgive applies to our forgiving of one another. It's a dismissing it. It's a sending it away. And here, the images, okay, keep the images in mind. As far as east is from west. Behind the back, sent away like the clouds of heaven, dropped into the middle of the ocean. We send the sin away. And here you see so quickly our need for God's help in our forgiving of one another, in our weakness, in our sin, even in our forgiving. Because all of those things are only done by the grace of God. We need God's help more and more to know what He has done for us, so that in faithfulness and truth we do that in our forgiveness of one another.